Hello, and welcome to the show Goldsquadrongays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays break down each episode of their favorite Star Wars TV shows while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm Charles Rogers.
And I'm Aeron Llewellyn.
Aeron, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
It is lovely to have you back talking with us about this episode. I brought you back for several reasons, and I also, I mentioned on a previous episode that I was very excited for some of those reasons. But before we dive into it, Aeron, have you been up to anything interesting?
I did get a new phone.
That is very exciting.
It is exciting. I'm trying to get used to an entirely new interface and...
Did you switch from... Now, this is an important question for our gay male listeners in particular, because we really care about this. Did you switch from Android to iPhone or vice versa?
Oh, no, it's just a new kind of Android phone. I'm just not good at learning new arrangements.
Got it.
It's a Pixel. It is a phone type brand name, redacted.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're not being sponsored by said. So
you can sponsor us though if you want, advertisers. Right. You can pay me. I'll put you in the show.
Right, I'll randomly bring up whatever phone when talking about Star Wars, because it'll connect perfectly.
So I don't think that we actually have any news. Bradley, you said you watched the recap video. I mean, there is news, but I don't think any of it is relevant to us.
None of it is relevant to us. As of this recording, if you're listening in the future, Visions has aired last week, and it was great. We loved it. It was the best episode we've ever seen.
He's pretending that he's already. I think Bradley, what I wish we could do is, maybe we could get the screeners at some point. That way, when we record these episodes 9 days out.
Oh my god! Can you imagine? If they had sent us screeners for Vision, I would have been fucking dead. I would have been like, oh my god, all my friends come to my house. We'll just watch it on my computer.
Just crowd them all in a room. I would have
exactly.
That's because we're gonna have a couple of days. We're gonna have like a 2 week or so delay, even if we record our episode real quick.
Yeah,
there's pros and cons to doing the episodes like we do when the current shows come out, where there's only like a 2-day turnaround time, and even that is a super long turnaround time.
Right.
When we do these 9 days out, it's like we can't keep up on everything that's happening.
Right. That's fine though.
A friend of mine who knows that I was once on this podcast before, when he saw that you guys were covering Bad Batch back to back like this, he was like, holy shit, look at these guys. They're just going for it through Bad Batch. Damn. So you've impressed at least one person.
Hey, that's all that we strive for. Is one.
That's all that we strive for. We only need one person to listen to the show and like it.
Right.
He and his wife, my best friend, they both love Star Wars too. So, yeah.
Well, shout out to them. We love them.
Shout out to you, whoever you are, Aaron's friends. All right. Well, if we don't have any news this week, which we don't,
right.
I mean, I could talk about the High Republic cover reveals, but then like Bradley would fly out of here and clock me across the head. Let's dive into the episode.
So this week, the Mandalorian reunites Frog Lady with her husband, braves the high seas, and meets unexpected allies. Aeron, name one thing about this episode you liked and one thing you did not.
Oh my god, I actually didn't prepare for this part. All of my deeply detailed notes. One thing I just really liked Bo-Katan. I liked Katie Sackhoff. I liked that we saw a new planet biome. Point to one thing exactly. I love how they finally, after all this time, introduced some conflicting narratives as per the historical and cultural background of Mandalorians, because I've been waiting for this moment to be like, wait, this ain't right based on the other Mandalorians I've seen.
That was a huge point too. I remember when the show was first airing in season 1, I remember there's a lot of people who were like big into Rebels and big into Clone Wars, and when they were talking authoritatively about the Mandalorians, and the rules that they set up in season 1 were different. People were like, if Mandalorians can't remove their helmets, then why are people removing their helmets all the time in Clone Wars and Rebels? What's going on here? And this was the episode that definitively answered what was going on there.
Beautiful way of painting. This is the knowledge of the protagonist. We're going in with the knowledge of the protagonist and slowly revealing the reality beyond their experience as we go. It's really great. A thing I didn't like that, because I had no idea who she was when I was watching the episode, because I didn't watch Clone Wars or Rebels. I was like, she seems like a cool lady. She looks familiar. Oh my gosh, it's Katie Sackhoff. Are we supposed to know who this is? Because they do introduce her with this like gravitas of gotta know who this is. I'm like, am I missing something?
It's definitely fan service. I'll give you that. Like,
I know they're relying on people having a bit of an understanding, and they would want to make you go and watch the other things. But as an outsider to that part of the canon, I definitely felt like it's very obvious that I'm missing something, and I don't like that feeling of not knowing something, because I like to know things always. Didn't like that.
One thing I really liked about the episode was the way that it comes in, it gets the job done, and it leaves. That the episode doesn't feel too short or too long. It feels like they could have, like, you see where they could have padded it, and they didn't. This episode it's only 35 minutes long. It's only like 30 if you cut out the beginning and end credits and recap. It's in, it's out, but it also doesn't feel like it's rushed. It tells the precise amount of story that it needed to tell. And you can see where they could have dragged it out by adding more conflict between Din and Bo-Katan. They don't. It's, here's who we are, here's what we're doing. We're going to do the freighter heist, which takes up half the episode, and then we're out. In, out, done. One thing I disliked, though, I'm going to note that later on that Trask, the planet that they're on, or rather, I think the moon that they're on, is not it's a new planet. It's a totally new planet. I felt like we could have seen a little bit more of it. Like, it feels like they stick to the port and then they go out on the boat and come back, and they're in the freighter and they're back. And it's basically the same, like, 3 locations in the port. And then that's it. We don't really get to see a lot of this planet, and we don't get to see what makes it different than other water biomes we've seen in other Star Wars media. So I wish we could have varied up the locations a little bit in the port. You can, I think, do that and tell the same story, but that would be it was hard to pick something I disliked in this episode, because this was a really solid, this may be my favorite episode of the season thus far. And I even put that above the one with the gay subtext in it.
We'll find out in our rankings
more
later.
Specific.
Go rewatch the scene between Cobb Vanth and Din Djarin in season 2, episode 1, and there's some gay shit going on there.
Oh, don't worry.
Just saying.
Don't worry.
Din Cobb is very popular. There's another ship with Din in it. Like, people are shipping Din Djarin and Luke Skywalker. Apparently, like, this is a big deal. Like, it ranked really high on, like, a list of
interesting
ship polls that they did recently, which Canera won correctly. It's the only acceptable heterosexual couple is Kanan and Hera. But Din Luke got pretty high up on the list, and I'm like, why?
Co-parenting vibes?
I hate that you put that thought into my head now, and I love it.
You hate it, but you love it.
I hate it, but I kind of love it. Yeah. Bradley, what's one thing about the episode you liked and one thing you didn't?
One thing I liked and actually kind of loved was the translation of Bo-Katan from cartoon to live action. I felt like her costume, her just the armor that she's wearing the whole episode. Like this from the first time you see it to just like every action shot, every like glamour shot they did on her. Like I just thought it looked so well made. I was like, I believe that she's wearing that outfit. I believe it's heavy. I believe it's real armor. Like I don't know. It translated so well because I feel like sometimes cartoons, it looks ridiculous sometimes if you try to translate it to live action, depending on the show and what it is. And it could have gone very cosplay-y if they weren't careful. Just because it is from Rebels, and Rebels and Clone Wars has like a very stylistic component to the animation, and so sometimes the weathering on the armor can look more like paint instead of actual like weathering. You know what I mean? So it depends, but I think the armoring, like the armor she wore, and all the other members of her squad, I think they all looked really good. So that's the one thing I liked. Just the costumes. This episode was my favorite, and then one thing I didn't like. I know that, and this kind of translates into this episode was also written by Jon Favreau. So the first 3 episodes were all written by Jon Favreau, and it makes sense because
that
it kind
explains
of like,
why they're kind of a trilogy.
Right. It's kind of this 3-part, kind of story arc, which is fine. And I don't mind that. It just, I didn't care for the like unnecessary scenes, I'll say, because like arguably, like we said last week, there were some scenes that you can cut, like that you don't need. This is kind of a similar situation, whereas anything with Baby Yoda in this episode and the frog people, theoretically you could have taken out. I mean, they could have done this stuff in the end of the last episode and then just left it, and then like, you know what I mean? Like
it felt like with the Baby Yoda and the frog people scenes that they were kind of in there to provide an excuse to not have Baby Yoda on the freighter.
Right.
Because he's like, there's only 2 after they're reunited. It's the one where he drops Baby Yoda off and the one where he picks Baby Yoda up.
Right.
On the other hand, I did really love the idea of Baby Yoda just hanging out with this frog couple.
So cute.
It's so cute. It's so cute.
But then you need to show me longer scenes with them. Like I need to see like a funnier interaction, a funnier, like, I need more from that then.
Yeah, they could have thrown one into the middle of the freighter heist. Just it might have broken up the tension. It might have broken up the action somewhat. But it also, like, you're right now that I think about it, and it wouldn't be maybe another minute to say, here, we're going to cut back to Baby Yoda being adorable for a minute.
Yeah, it definitely felt like, all right, we need a babysitter. Good thing we introduced the frog couple.
Right.
It is interesting, real fast before we jump into the episode, to note that at the start of the season, he takes the baby into this, like, dingy fight club environment on the grounds that wherever I go, he goes. And then he has now this episode left Baby Yoda behind. Apparently that was revisited slightly. The whole wherever I go, he goes thing. Because he was willing to leave him with a babysitter that time. That was my final thought on that.
Yeah, we'll see how things evolve with this interaction as opposed to past interactions with outsiders.
Well, let's get into it. Our episode begins with the Razor Crest crashing into the Trask Ocean. After being pulled from the water, Frog Lady is finally reunited with her husband. Baby Yoda is still hungry, and a mysterious woman in a hood watches the group from afar. At the inn, Mando gets some info on where to find more Mandalorians, and Baby Yoda plays with his chowder.
Did either of you catch the reference in the opening scene, what that was a reference to? Because I didn't.
The opening scene, which
just of the crash?
Of the crash, of the re-entry.
Is it from like Interstellar or something? Like, I don't know what's supposed to be.
Let's talk about who this episode is directed by.
Oh, okay. That's right. I keep
ahead.
forgetting. You want to jump ahead? Okay, that's fine. Let's do that.
Let's jump ahead to who this episode is directed by. Because we have mentioned it was written by Jon Favreau, but Bradley, who was this episode directed by?
Surprisingly, and this will color the way that I approached this episode, but was shocked by the end. It was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard.
Now, Bryce Dallas Howard is the daughter of Ron Howard, who is a prolific director. He directed Solo, A Star Wars Story. But one of the other things that he directed was a little historical movie called Apollo 13, which is only one of the most famous space movies of all time.
Yeah.
And the re-entry scene at the end of Apollo 13 is what apparently this intro sequence was a reference to.
Gotcha.
Because I have
Apollo 13 re-entry was dicey.
Yep. And that same sequence, like I have in my notes here how the top-down shot where the thing is dropping away from the camera towards the planet is really freaky. Part of the reason why it's shot that way is it's a reference to her father's arguably most famous movie.
Oh, okay.
That makes sense.
It does make sense. I also like that it's in my notes. I know that I really like how it's grounded in the reality of re-entry into an atmosphere. They're becoming a meteor.
Yeah. Well, I also like that too, because normally in Star Wars, we don't see that stuff, right? They either skip over that part or they're going so fast that it doesn't happen usually. The only time we've ever really seen a re-entry like that was Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith. They crash the
giant
half
ship.
The invisible hand.
Right, exactly. So that's the only time we've ever seen it, and that's because they're entering the atmosphere at a greater speed than a non-controlled speed. So usually in Star Wars, we see a controlled speed entry. So it's like they know how fast they want to go. They know like when they want to come out of it. So there's never the flames and the fire.
Usually your ship is working properly.
Right.
I loved how we got like the condensation on the window, like to show that would actually that's one of the things that happens. That's one of the challenges that astronauts have to face when they're on re-entry, is that the outside of the ship is going to have condensation on it, or the outside of the inside, one of them, but like it'll mess with instruments if something goes wrong.
The same goes for aircraft in general. There's so many things when it comes to pressure. When you get that high up, it's so cold and everything just goes haywire. And then when you're dropping at that rate, it's very dangerous.
Our dank ferret count is now at 3.
Yes, I wrote down dank ferret count. Well, for this episode, this is number 1. So I wrote down dank ferret count 1, and I was like, oh, the total's gone up.
The total's gone to 3. They're bringing it up.
I know. So I did notice like this is where we start to see it, because I think last time we said, like, I know that they say it a bunch this season. We just didn't realize when they said it. And I think this is when it kind of starts, because I think we get 2 this episode. So we're like, all right, well, this is getting ridiculous.
It became memed, I think. I think it was said like once in season 1 in the premiere episode, and it got memed to hell. So they started putting in it more.
Right.
Or maybe it's like, I don't know what language it's supposed to be from, but it made me think, since it's said by a particular character, made me go, is that a Mandalorian phrase?
I never thought about it.
Yeah, I didn't either, but I think you might be right.
I think it might,
because they have their own language.
Yeah, I think it might specifically. Oh man, I didn't even realize that it might specifically, like the way Carabast is specifically, I think specifically a Lasat swear, but then Pow uses it on Scarif in Rogue One, and Ezra picks it up from Zeb.
Right.
But I never even thought that dank ferret might specifically be Mandalorian.
It might be, yeah.
Maybe
because
Mandalorian as a language is like the German of the universe, that setting. So it's like everybody knows the swear words.
Right.
Yeah,
that's true. You're actually right. I think it might be like that kind of like, because everybody knows how to say bad words in Spanish. You know what I mean? So it's like it's like the same kind of situation. Like everybody knows what all the bad words are in Spanish. So it's like the kind of same thing. You can just say the same stuff. So
it's the last thing to go upon assimilation.
And when you're talking about like a galaxy spanning civilizations, then you're only the best swears are going to make their way into the common lexicon. It's a battle royale for different ways to say fuck.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, linguistics.
Mm-hmm.
The planet, or the moon rather, I correct
Mhm.
myself here. The moon that they crash onto is called Trask.
Mhm.
I thought in the trailer they might be on Mon Cala.
Yeah.
They are not. They are actually not even on a moon of Mon Cala. They're on a moon of a gas giant called, I didn't write this down, Kol Iben, I think is the name of the gas giant that the Razor Crest kind of comes around to approach Trask. I don't know why it couldn't have been Mon Cala, but I guess.
Yeah.
I guess they wanted.
You'd think so, because literally the only people who live on this planet are Quarren and Mon Calamari. So it makes no sense like why they wouldn't just make it, you know.
But it's not a moon of, I guess it's a colony. Like they've introduced this concept, but they have like different planets will have different colonies. So in the new audio drama Tempest Runner, which is interesting. When we do our eventual High Republic episode, I'll talk about audio dramas. But they've done a few of them, and they're actually a really interesting medium. But in the audio drama Tempest Runner, Lorda D, who is one of the main antagonists of the High Republic era, she comes from a Rylothian colony world. She's not from Ryloth. She's from one of their colony worlds. So I think this is a colony, probably a colony world of Mon Cala, which is why they have both Quarren and Mon Calamari on there. Did you pick up the crane, Bradley? Aaron, I don't expect you to have picked this up, but Bradley liked Solo, so...
I didn't... What's funny is I didn't even write it in my notes, but I just remember it. Like, I don't have to write it down, so it's just something that I just sticks out in my brain. That, yes, the crane was clearly... Imperial Walker / whatever's on top.
Well, we've also seen things like that before in the distance, in the background of another Ron Howard directed movie, Solo: A Star Wars Story.
Right. So she used like the same machine. We'll call them machines. The same machines are in Solo that are in this scene.
See, Clone Wars directors, this is how you put in homages to your parents' work without it being awkward and stilted. I'm sorry, I have lots of notes on this section. I know Bradley condensed it, but I have lots of notes.
I know it's hard because like we literally, I literally tried to keep it all in one small little section because nothing really. I didn't think anything major happens in the section, but there is so many little tiny things.
There's just tons of little stuff.
It's such a good episode.
I have so many notes on this part. The only thing that I'm dedicated to mentioning is that made me think of this whole scene made me think of Top Gun.
Top Gun.
Okay, why? So when you're trying to land an aircraft on a runway that's on the water, it's already hard enough if you're not like entering an atmosphere and there's a baby on board and an aquarium full of babies. You have as explained by the documentary film featuring Tom Cruise, Val Kilmer, and just the most glorious soundtrack of all time, we all know that it's a danger zone.
I've only seen the volleyball scene from Top Gun.
We've all seen the volleyball scene from Top Gun.
I've never seen Top Gun, so
it's fun.
More references in the details here. It came out after the fact. She is uncredited in the episode, but the nostril operator of the Mon Calamari dock workers, so the person who specifically did the nostrils,
is moving the face. Okay,
specifically the nostrils is a woman named Janina Gavankar.
Okay,
and Janina Gavankar is best known for being the face and voice of Iden Versio in Battlefront 2.
Oh, that's so random.
Like, she was just randomly there. They brought her in to work the nostrils.
Hey, can you make sure you flare his nostrils whenever he's talking about this thing and da-da-da-da-da, like...
Yeah, the woman who actually did that was Iden Versio, best known from Battlefront 2, but she also appears in the book Battlefront 2 Inferno Squad. by Christy Golden. And also, fun fact, I have her Lego minifigure.
Of course
You should get her to sign it for you.
That was a little kind of cameo. She's not credited, but if you've played Battlefront 2, which Bradley, I know you haven't because you only own a Switch.
Right.
Because, you know, you are a twink. For the rest of us who've actually played video games, she was in Battlefront 2.
God forbid any of us ever become famous, because Charles will certainly acquire a Lego figurine of us.
Oh, definitely.
God, I know, right?
Without question. I know someone, I'm not going to say who it is, but I know someone, and one thing that they do that is really cool, because they live here in Los Angeles, and so they know people that have had merchandise made of them. And they actually, on display in their house, have a little area where they have merchandise of their friends that have been made.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's definitely 100% something that I would do. If I know somebody who had like a Lego minifigure of them, I would immediately go and get it.
Voodoo dolls.
100%.
That's all I'm thinking is voodoo dolls. Poppets.
I promise we're coming to the end of towards the end of the notes for my notes for this sequence. The woman in the hood we'll talk about later. I had her noted here, but we'll talk about her later. The only other reference that I had is the way he pays the Mon Calamari for information. He uses Mon Calamari flan that he got from Grief Karga all the way back in season 1, episode 1. He was paid Mon Calamari flan by Grief Karga all the way back in season 1, episode 1.
Up next, the boat ride goes horribly wrong as the Corran sailors try to commit murder against Baby Yoda while trying to feed him to their sea monster. Thankfully, the day is saved by some mysterious Mandalorians who end up taking off their helmets, shocking Mando to his cult-raised core.
Yeah.
I have two non-Mandalorian notes here that I'm going to blow through real fast.
Okay.
I love how Baby Yoda closes his own pod.
Yes, he's smart enough to...
If you look very closely, he is, like we talked about how in episode 1 he does it.
Yeah.
It's clearly some sort of training that Mando has done.
Like, protect yourself.
He has said, if you are in danger, close the pod immediately. And Baby Yoda realizes, okay, I'm about to be eaten. And if you look, he actually reaches around and closes the pod himself.
Right.
Yeah.
The other note I had is that our dank ferret count is now at 4.
Yes.
Wait, it's at 4 now?
It's 4 now for the overall series. It's 2 for this episode.
2 for this episode. And funny enough, it's said by Bo-Katan. So I thought that was weird because it's like that they both said it in this episode each, but then it's like she just kind of just says it like it's normal. Like she always says it. So I thought it was like, all right, let's throw that out there again. But
I like it. I like that integration of the world building. Again, my theory is that maybe it is from Mandalorian. The language.
Exactly. One thing I will note in this scene, which is interesting, in the past, you know, everything again has been about Baby Yoda, Baby Yoda, Baby Yoda. And this is probably, I think this is only the second time where, no, in this season, we talked about this in the first episode, how they're not necessarily after Baby Yoda. They're after the Mandalorian and his armor, which is
correct.
Which is weird, but I guess it makes sense because like what's more expensive or what's worth it to you is like the money you can make from selling his armor or, you know, the child, which there might be some bounty on out there. But
we will also see later on that Moff Gideon has clearly switched. Like he was using bounty hunters in the first season to go after Mando. The guild is not going after him now that they've been kicked off. The Imperials have been mostly kicked off of Navarro. So the guild is no longer going after the child. He's switched it up. So the people that are going to be trapping Mando now are going to be doing it for the Beskar armor because there's this fucking kid that who gives a shit about.
Right.
Yeah, I think outside of the people that are paid to be looking for this kid, it's a need to know basis. that there's a Baby Yoda out there. I think the average person in this universe is, like the armorer mentions in season 1, this is going to make you a target because you have this valuable resource just on your person.
Right.
Let's talk about Bo-Katan cries.
Wait. Let's leave her for last, because I feel like we can skip
her
through.
for
We
last.
can do the other two first and get through them quicker. Because I feel like Bo-Katan's going to take way too long. So we needed to. I know you want to talk about her. She's great.
I really do. Bradley, do you want to educate us then on Casca Reeves and Axe Woves?
Yeah, let's do them first. So let's start with Casca Reeves, played by stage name Sasha Banks. Her real name is Mercedes, because she is credited actually in the credits as Mercedes and then her real last name. But she is known to the world as Sasha Banks. She is an American professional wrestler, and Sasha Banks is her stage name.
I learned a fun fact about her in this episode, actually.
That she likes to eat worms?
So that is, I think, some sort of noodle that she had to slurp.
Okay.
Like that was some sort of udon noodle or something that she had to slurp. Fun fact about her in this episode, she is not doing a lot of her own stunts in this episode.
Strange.
Really?
And the reason is because she is a professional wrestler. She has to go on and wrestle every week. It's a weekly thing. She has to go on and do it.
Right.
And so there was some concern that she didn't want to get injured doing The Mandalorian and have this affect her wrestling career.
That makes sense.
So she's actually not doing a lot of her own stunts in this. She absolutely 100% can do them, but because of her career concerns, she's actually not doing a lot of her own stunts.
Well, I love the stunts she does do, like not the ones that she's actually doing, but her character is doing. Very physical stuff that her character does in this scene. And then she proceeds to dive underwater in her outfit, right? Her armor. And then we don't get to see the action, which I was a little disappointed. We didn't get to get any underwater scenes, but it kind of makes sense, I guess. Because we kind of learned two things from this scene. One is, because we see it with Mando a little bit, he uses his jetpack to get himself to the surface of the water so he doesn't drown at one point. And then when she dives into the water to get Baby Yoda back, we kind of see flashes in the water. So we know that she's using her jetpack to maneuver underwater and somehow get Baby Yoda out of the monster. But it was just such a cool idea. Like, I just wish we would have seen it.
And the other guy is Axe Woves. Tell us a little bit about Axe Woves, Bradley.
So he's a little more interesting, only because he is also an actor. Whereas Sasha Banks is obviously not an actor by nature. So Axe Woves is played by Simon Cassianides. Okay. I'm sorry to him. Simon K.
Our sincerest apologies for butchering.
I think it's Greek.
Okay, because I know he's from the UK. So anyway, Simon K. Known from, well, what at least I know him from, he has been on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So he has been on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with Agent May. So that's a little crossover right there.
He's got two.
Yep, he's got two. He's both Marvel and Star Wars. But funny enough, he is not the only person this episode that's from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So once we get there, I'll say it.
Interesting.
But, so he was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He played a Hydra agent on that. But fun fact for you, Charles, he was also on 2 episodes of How to Get Away with Murder.
Oh shit! Which episodes was he in?
I have no idea. He's a 2-episode arc or something on that show.
Oh, I have to look this up now, because How to Get Away with Murder, for our new viewers who are not as familiar with me and my tastes, I consider How to Get Away with Murder the best television show that has come out in the last decade. I think that the pilot is perfect. It is a note perfect pilot that you could teach a course going through beat by beat the pilot of How to Get Away with Murder.
Right. Okay.
So yeah,
I just thought you would like that little fun fact.
I did like that. I also have a fun story about Simon Kay.
Okay.
Is that according to Wikipedia, when I was doing some research, apparently he actually froze up when filming his first scene because he was so overwhelmed by just being immersed in Star Wars. Because of the stormtroopers and the detailing on the elevator buttons. He did what I think all of us would do and froze up. And he actually had to ask the cast and crew to just give him a minute to just kind of be in this area because he couldn't concentrate on what he was doing. He was just so overwhelmed to actually be in a Star Wars.
Totally fair. Totally
That's
fair.
So relatable.
It's one of the most it's one of the most magical things when you're on a period set like that. Like I remember one of the first films in school that I ever worked on was, of course, a World War II film, because there's one every year. You can go to the school that I went to, my alma mater, you could pick any given year and somebody's going to make a World War II period film. But I remember it being on set. And when you get that distance, when you have that proximity to this almost other world, it is kind of jarring if you're doing it, something a period piece like this. So to be immersed in Star Wars to that degree, yeah, I would probably freeze too, frankly.
Which is why I would never want my face to be visible if I was ever in a Star Wars project. Because I don't want to be able to see my face. So like if I were ever in a Star Wars project, I want to be either an alien with my face covered, or I want to be a robot and just use my voice. Because I don't want
on yourself, your face.
I don't want the stress of being like, I need to emote with my face. Like I want to be able to like just enjoy, and rather than like have to like put myself in that situation, I want to be like, no, I'm already in the world. I can be like, yep, that's me. I'm that robot right there. Like, you know,
the voice of the robot.
Right. I would actually that's exactly what I want. I want to be a droid. I don't want to be a human, and I don't want to be an alien. I want to be a droid. If I'm ever in a Star Wars thing, I want to be a droid.
If I was ever in a Star Wars thing, I'd want to wear a uniform. That would be my thing. So either a resistance uniform or like a deck officer. Yeah. Like I want to wear a uniform of some description. That would be fun. So either like the resistance uniforms that they have, or like a First Order or Imperial uniform, or even like a Clone Wars era deck officer uniform. Just some sort of uniform would be cool to actually wear.
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay, let's move on to Bo-Katan. I know everybody's favorite character. We're going to talk about this for at least another hour.
Our problematic fave. Yes. Let's talk about Bo-Katan Kryze, played by Katie Sackhoff. Bradley, you want to tell us a little bit about Katie Sackhoff?
Yes. Known in the nerd world, I guess, would be Battlestar Galactica as what she's most known for. Funny enough, I did not know her from that. Back when I worked with Adult Swim, I knew her most from, she is the voice of a robot chicken character called Bitch Pudding. So funny enough, that's what I knew her from. I did not know her from anything else. But I saw the Battlestar Galactica thing and I was like, oh, I've heard of that. I've never seen Battlestar Galactica.
Well, fortunately, Aeron, you have actually watched Battlestar Galactica, I believe. Is that correct?
That is correct. I did the math, and after 20 minutes of doing math, I realized I was 11 or so when Battlestar Galactica first started airing, and I watched it start to finish as it aired, the Sci-Fi Channel. And so Battlestar Galactica, the reboot of the 80s show, had a big impact on me just because it was what I was watching every Friday night. And one of my favorite characters was Kara Thrace, Starbuck, who Starbuck's a great character. Fascinatingly enough, in my opinion, the character in the original show was male, and she plays this gender bent version of the character, and she's this hard drinking ace pilot. It's great. It's great. It's great. She was only in her early 20s when she first started on the role in 2004, and she hadn't done, I looked up her filmography and she hadn't done a bunch, but she did such a good audition Like, she managed to pull off this character. They weren't looking for someone that young. They were looking for someone with a bit more years under their belt. She was like 23 or so, and she managed to carry off this like complicated, like tomboyish character with all this trauma and everything. She's just a very good actress. And 11-year-old Aeron was just staring at the screen like, why can't I stop looking?
I can hazard a guess as to why.
Why do I want her to arm wrestle me and just like flip me over her shoulder and throw me on the deck? I don't understand yet. We don't have to unpack that right now.
Now, Aeron, the question that I have for you about Bo-Katan is you had indicated to me that you deliberately wanted to come in with just the knowledge of Bo-Katan from The Mandalorian. That you didn't before you recorded this, you really didn't go in and look up a lot about her in the other shows. What was your impression of Bo-Katan just based on that knowledge?
Well, that statement was mostly based on the fact that I went, I should do some research on this character and fully understand. Oh no, there's too much. I don't have time to do this. I only have a few days.
She's been in a lot.
Yeah.
Let's just go in, as the control participant, and go in based on what I've already heard of this character and my memories of my first impression of her. So my first impression of her, as I was watching, I had no idea who this character was. But watching this initially, when I first watched it, whenever that was, because time is a flat circle, who knows when that was, I was like, oh, she must be important because she's being treated with a lot of gravitas. Hello, I'm Bo-Katan Kryze of Mandalore. I fought in the Purge. And then the whole time I'm like, she seems important.
Mm-hmm.
She does the whole list your name and titles thing. Interestingly, to address what you just said about the airing, this episode aired on November 13th, 2020. That might be why you are struggling to get back in that mindset, because we all remember November of 2020, how that was.
That's crazy that was just like, I know, it's hard to remember.
The presidential election of 2020 took place on Tuesday, November 3rd. This episode aired 10 days after that. Remember, we talked about the episode 0 about the time in which this season came out.
That's true, because if you think about it, 10 days after an election is still too soon to theoretically call it, right? They're still fixing stuff, or did we call it?
They had called it traditionally. They call it pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right. But this was an untraditional.
This is an untraditional election. It took about, I think, probably 4 or 5 days after this election. Time loses meaning. There was some whiskey involved in the presidential election of 2020, but it was several days after. I think by this point, most major media outlets had called the election for Joe Biden.
Okay. That's so strange. It's just weird dating this stuff because you don't think about it. You're just like, I do remember though that Mandalorian during at least the month of November and December for 2020 was my escape. I mean, that was like, I look forward to that every week. It was like, I need something other than, the news to watch. Like we were watching like the news and then the Mandalorian. Like that was it. Like that's all I was watching.
Oh yeah,
so,
100%.
100%. The one little bright spot.
The one little spot of joy.
Exactly.
Disaster. And then they called the election. We're like, great, it's going to be okay then. Nothing.
Yeah, first we get
bad will happen.
Right, first we get the elections called, and then Bo-Katan shows up on the Mandalorian. So basically, everybody's life by this point is starting to get back on track. Everybody's like, all right, we're heading in a good direction.
So from what I understand, Bo-Katan was elected president of the United States. It was unanimous.
Well,
Well,
close.
We're gonna see where this goes.
Right.
Bo-Katan, this episode is called the Heiress.
Mm-hmm.
And Bo-Katan's motivations are revealed in this episode, throughout the episode. But the episode doesn't explicitly state who she is, why she has a claim to the position, and what's really interesting about what she wants to do given her history. Bo-Katan, in brief, does have the gravitas that Aeron assigned to her when she first witnessed Bo-Katan on screen and was like, this lady is important, but I couldn't tell you why.
Right.
Bo-Katan,
the actress.
Bo-Katan Kryze is the sister of Satine Kryze, who was the Duchess of Mandalore during the Clone Wars. And Satine Kryze was quite famously insistently neutral through the Clone Wars. She would not pick a side in this war at all. That was her whole thing. She was also in love with Obi-Wan Kenobi, which was reciprocated. They had a little something going on. But she was killed, and Mandalore fell into the hands of Death Watch, and then by way of Death Watch, Darth Maul. Bo-Katan finally joined up with the Republic to launch a counterattack, and as soon as they took back the planet, Order 66 came through, like several hours later, after the planet was retaken. She shows up again in Rebels, leading eventually a Mandalorian resistance that will eventually, as we know from the show The Mandalorian, is eventually crushed. Most of the Mandalorians are killed, and Bo-Katan goes into exile. That is a super abridged version of what she was up to in the past. But her claim on the throne is that, firstly, that she was the sister of the Duchess, but she also has an interesting other claim because she was a lieutenant to a guy named Pre Vizsla in their organization, which we'll touch on in a second. Pre Vizsla did, I think, claim the title of Mandalore briefly. He was the previous wielder of the Darksaber, and he was killed by Darth Maul, and Darth Maul took it and declared himself the leader of Mandalore. Although I don't think he went as far as to declare himself Mandalore. I don't think he could do that. But so she's been second fiddle to a lot of leaders of Mandalore, the planet, in the past. That is a super condensed version of what happened.
No, that's helpful because after my initial watch of it, back whenever that happened, who knows when, I ended up looking up, who is this person? Probably because Charles was like, oh yeah, that's a character from the Clone Wars and Rebels. I'm like,
here's the specific episodes that you can watch to see her in them.
I was gonna say, I'm sure there's a really cute YouTube video out there of like, who is Bo-Katan Kryze? And then like it'll go through the whole entire history of who she is.
Oh, I'll guarantee you with 99.99% certainty that Star Wars Explained has done that.
Oh yeah, there you go. You could just watch
I'll bet you with almost 100% certainty that Star Wars Explained has done that. That's a lot of his bread and butter, is making videos to answer those questions.
I did at the time watch one of those type of videos to be like, oh, okay, just give me an abridged. Just give me an abridged. Okay.
Yeah.
And it really overwhelmed me. I was like, I'm going to have to watch this whole show. So your summation, you're very succinct. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Yep. So that's an easy way to think about it, is she's basically been second fiddle to two separate leaders of Mandalore, the planet, who were actually in conflict with each other. That's
like one of those royal family messes that happened at the turn of the last century in the lead up to World War I is what it reminds me of.
Oh yeah, if you look at Mandalore politics, like it's the Kryze family and the Vizsla family, it's all family based too. Like you have the Kryzes and the Vizslas and the Wrens and these different noble houses.
Well, it's very Game of Thrones, right? Like it's very like these houses are all very important. They all have control somewhere in this, we'll call it a country, or in this case, a planet, and so it's very much like they're all kind of inner fighting with each other to seize control. So it's like, it's very actually.
And she's really the last one
right
left.
Well, she said that, right?
She's the last of her line, but she's also the last one. Because we've met a Vizsla in season 1.
Yes.
But
I forget his name, but yeah.
Yeah, but she's probably one of the best. I mean, the episode is called The Heiress. Now, depending, because here's the thing, right? I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat for a minute. There's another character in the Clone Wars. Bo-Katan has a nephew. Bo-Katan's nephew is also stated to be Satine Kryze, who's the former Duchess of Mandalore's nephew as well.
Who is their sibling?
What an excellent question. I'm so glad you asked. We see absolutely no indication that either of these women has another sibling.
Oh, so it's like her secret child.
The theory that I am 100% on board with is that Corky Kryze is Satine Kryze and Obi-Wan Kenobi's illegitimate son.
Yes.
That makes sense.
So we could be dealing with an Aegon Targaryen situation from A Dance with Dragons,
right?
Where there is and by which I mean Aegon. Yeah. Is it Aegon or A?
Yeah, I think that's right. That's right.
The fake prince from the book A Dance with Dragons, not the TV show character. He was excised, but yeah, she has a nephew who, by all accounts, should still be alive. Because he'd be like in his, oh Lord, he'd be in like his 40s at this point.
Well, and again, not to keep bringing it back to Game of Thrones, but this is kind of the show that people would want to see, right? Like if you want to do like a spinoff of The Mandalorian and you want to just focus on the Mandalorian characters, if that's kind of where they're going with this, you could focus on Bo-Katan and just all the houses and stuff and like all those characters and just expand on like do a Game of Thrones style show. And then you could have it be like, hey, by the way, there is this illegitimate heir that technically has claim to the throne that nobody knows about, or they know about, but they don't know that he's like the direct like line of ready to be ascended to the throne, you know.
George isn't involved anymore, Dave. There's no George around to tell you that you can't have Obi-Wan Kenobi have an illegitimate kid. And you know, right. High Republic establishes that the Jedi do bang.
Hey, we don't know anything about the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. So theoretically, maybe that's what they've been doing this whole time is like, they're like, hey, this is what this show is going to actually be about.
Game of Thrones, my understanding is that it's very heavily influenced by the real life War of the Roses, which was a big ass succession crisis in England.
Yes.
It's really Britain. And it was very much one of those, like, a couple families, there's some royal bastards involved, there's a whole religious crisis, who does what, and in order to have that kind of conflict, you have to have an established empire or nation state. Based on what you're telling me about the situation with Mandalore, it really reminds me more of the way that this is a planet that's already fallen.
Yeah, and you've got these groups in diaspora, these coverts running around, each with their own different way of doing things.
Yeah. I didn't do enough research to really back up my thoughts on it, but this is definitely something that we saw after World War One, when it was groups wanting to build a nation state based on their particular set of beliefs, extremist or not, that tore apart what was then Austria-Hungary. Like, no, we want to do a Croatia. And then an archduke gets shot and it all gets rolled into this bigger crisis. And at the end of the day, it's all of these smaller ethno-states. They can't be concerned about a succession crisis. They're trying not to just die by genocide.
Let's switch gears to Children of the Watch, because she does bring that up.
Interestingly, piggybacking off the Mandalore,
right?
The way of the Mandalore is mentioned by Den as being, and we've heard it in the past in season 1,
Mhm.
It's mentioned by Dan as being the thing his covert follows, because we learn, thanks to Bo-Katan in this episode, we learn the reason why Din's Mandalorians seem to be more dogmatic than the Mandalorians we've seen in the past. The reason being is that Din was taken and raised by a group called the Children of the Watch, which are stated by Bo-Katan in the episode. They're a splinter group that broke off. They want to basically keep to the old ways, what they call the way of the Mandalore. And it's very interesting that Bo-Katan would know this, because they seem to be a splinter group that have broken off a already splinter group of the Mandalorians called Death Watch, which were a terrorist organization whose stated goal was they wanted to return Mandalore to its warrior past. And Bo-Katan would know this because she was a high-ranking lieutenant in Death Watch. Aeron, let's learn about some cults. Let's talk about the Children of the Watch and their indoctrinating children and religious dogmatic zealotry.
Oh, I have many notes. Just how do I want to go about
Let's
this?
learn about some cults.
Well, you know what we can start with? We can start with the sheer fact that when she brings it up, he does not recognize what she's talking about. He doesn't go, he goes, what are you talking about? He's like, what are the Children of the Watch? What is he basically doesn't realize he's in a cult. So
he thinks
that would be a great place.
He thinks he's part of the greater Mandalorian society. And it's like, what are we? What is this? What's going on here? It's a cult apparently that he's in.
She says cult. She says cult in the episode. She's like, they're this cult that does X, Y, and Z. I love the way this goes down, because I have had conversations like this. Not to lean immediately into here are my experiences as a ex-fundie, but it's so well done in the sense that this is how someone would react to this new knowledge. We are seeing being a Mandalorian through the eyes of Din Djarin. And that is made very obvious by the fact that this is brand new information to the audience and to him, that there are other ways to be a Mandalorian. And two, the narrative that is well known about how Mandalorians just are and their culture and everything. We see no reason, especially if you're going in as someone who doesn't know much about the past lore. You're like, yeah, I mean, this checks out. I mean, we never see other Mandalorian characters without the helmet if you've just seen the movies, so this makes sense. But
we see Jango and Boba without theirs in Attack of the Clones, but if you're watching just the original trilogy, no, Boba never takes his helmet off.
Exactly. It's a reasonable thing to have in mind. And cults, if you really want to do a cult and indoctrination right, you want to get them young. You want to completely limit their exposure to outside knowledge. Same goes for an authoritarian political state, of course, but we're doing a little bit of both, a little of A, a little of B. You want to limit their understanding of the outside world. You want to erase their personal identity.
Kind of like leaving your helmet on all the time.
Right.
Yes. You are not an individual, you are a Mandalorian. And we all look the same. We have a uniform. We are all part of this one group that is persecuted by society. And especially isolated separatist cults in real life. If you want to get your cult off the ground, you get as far away from civilization as possible, because you keep the cult members from having a venue or means of getting out. I mean, that's why there's so many various cult splinter groups that settled the American West. Theoretically, if you pack up a bunch of people and move them out to first Missouri and then pack them up again when you have to leave town after being declared a...
This is totally hypothetical, by the way.
This is totally hypothetical.
We are not talking about a specific group.
If your cult leader were murdered in jail and you had to skip town to and go out to Utah, controlling outside knowledge. And in this situation, it's easy to limit this your cult members outside knowledge if most of your people have been murdered in a genocide of some kind. They have no other frame of reference. And I know that one annoying thing about the show, unfortunately, is that the code, the way of the Mandalore, isn't written down anywhere.
We have talked about that in previous episodes. Like, what exactly is in the Mandalorian creed? And we talked about, particularly in episode 1, like, is it a type of thing that people view like as something you have to follow every letter in it exactly? Or you can take the broad overarching, or there's different interpretations of the Mandalorian creed depending on who you ask.
Yeah, a lot of long-standing old religions, especially, their doctrine is preserved in oral history. And if you're a fundamentalist sect, not having it written down anywhere really benefits you, because you can pick and choose what you tell your members.
If you, for example, want to direct them to do certain things like return Jedi to their group or do other things that you don't want to do. And maybe I imagine it would be useful to have, for example, a phrase that you could say that basically communicates that this is how you need to operate. This is, for example, the way to do things. And not have a written down code to go, is this really the way, though?
When you're a member of a cult, you don't know you're a member of a cult. The way he's interpreting this is all Mandalorians wear the helmet and follow the way. They've taken off their helmet. They're not real Mandalorians.
And, Bo-Katan's reaction is indignant to this when he says, you're not a real Mandalorian. And she's like, I'm Bo-Katan cries.
Right. She's like, I'm literally royalty. She's like, I'm literally royalty.
I am literally Mandalorian royalty. Like, how dare you say
and
this?
Of course, when you're talking to someone who's embedded in a fundamentalist cult like this, you can't really argue with them. You can't appeal to logic, because their logic is only functions internal to the cult.
Right. Like we talk about the idea of deprogramming a lot lately.
Yeah.
And as it relates to the second season of The Mandalorian, the idea of deprogramming someone from a cult or an extremist group, and the way you actually have to go in and talk to them. And we actually see, as the season goes along, particularly since Din is isolated from the reinforcement of his cult values. A lot of times, if you look at a modern day cult, or you look at a modern day extremist group like this, you look at something like that, they're very particular about wanting you to keep in contact with them.
And don't talk to outsiders.
And don't talk to outsiders. Limit your conversation with outsiders as much as possible. And the reason being is that keeps you isolated in the way that religious groups that would move out to remote areas, it's the same deal. Because when you get in and you start talking to people who are not in your group, you might start to get deprogrammed, which raises the question of, is there a written down Mandalorian creed, or is he just going by what the armorer, who seems to be their leader, or at least a person in a position of authority, is saying to him?
You see him justifying things because he's operating through this season on the word of this authority within his faction. And he starts I imagine himself making excuses to himself, like, okay, yeah, I'm doing this thing that is technically breaking the commandment, but it's in the service of the greater ideal passed down to me by my spiritual leader. The end will justify the means.
Because Operation Sender, we mentioned Iden Versio, whose actress appeared earlier in this episode as the nostrils of the Mon Calamari dock worker. She, again, went through very similar things, and you see it with the Imperial defectors a lot, that they're all in for the Empire, and then the Empire does something, and like the scales fall from their eyes. They're like, oh, this was bad, actually.
And speaking of that, that's something that the episode gets into later. So I'll drop the whole.
I was gonna say, let's put a pin in that, because it does happen later on with other Imperial people.
Yeah. I will just say that on my initial watch of this, seeing Bo-Katan react to this, all I could think was just, I have had that conversation. It's the conversation of you're someone who is peripheral to the sect, or you're on your way out of the sect, and you can walk back and forth between the two worlds, or you're part of maybe the mainline group of this sect. And then you meet the people who share your philosophy and your historical understanding. And so you can speak their language, and you can meet them where they are better than the average person, but you can't shake that belief. It's so frustrating.
And we do see later on in the episode, we'll get to it, Bo-Katan does speak to him in his language later on. Yeah. This is not a podcast specifically about cult deprogramming,
right.
Although if I could get away with doing an episode specifically on that, I would.
Right.
Yeah, hit me up. I'm down anytime.
Mando is yet again ambushed by squid people, but saved yet again by Bo-Katan and squad. They buy Mando a drink, and he agrees to help them steal back some weapons. Before helping the crew, Mando returns to Frog Lady so she can babysit the child.
We have our first indication here of Bo-Katan's stated goal to install a Mandalore, the position. Mm-hmm. Something that they've not really had in a long time, because Satine Kryze was not Mandalore. Pre Vizsla, I can't remember whether or not he's listed on the Wikipedia article for Mandalore as a Mandalore, but I don't remember if he ever actually claims the title in the show. And that's it.
Right.
It's him. He's the most recent one. It's important that she said she wants to put a new Mandalore on the throne. Keep that in mind. It will come up later in the episode. Bradley, did you, Aaron, I know you probably didn't, but Bradley, did you recognize the Gazanti freighter?
No.
No?
No.
Gazanti freighters were first seen in The Phantom Menace in the background as Qui-Gon and team walk into Mos Espa, and they appeared prominently in the Clone Wars as well as in Rebels. They are the the TIE fighter carriers that you see, the ones with the TIE fighters attached to the bottom. Another fun fact, I also own this Lego set. So that's where the Gazanti freighter is from. This is not our first view of it in live action, but it is our first prominent view of it. It was just in the background previously.
You guys are posting the Lego sets to your Instagram as you go through the subjects, right?
No, but we should. I wish I had mine. I'm in the middle of a project right now because mine have been in storage for half a decade. I'm in the middle of a project now to rebuild and repair a lot of them. I wish I'd gotten to the Gazanti freighter before we recorded this episode, because we could have actually posted a photo.
In the or when they're getting a drink with Mando, Bo-Katan does bring up the sheer fact that she knows where at least one Jedi is. So from what we know, knowledge-wise, before this show even aired, we already knew who this Jedi was before its name dropped later on. But we knew
the rumor mill had circulated, so right. we kind of strongly suspected who the Jedi was going to be.
Right. But let's pretend for a second we don't know who it is. She says, I know where to find at least one. So knowing what we know about Order 66 and everything, who theoretically could it have been?
Basically nobody but Ahsoka.
Right.
There were only two Jedi that Bo-Katan ever got along with in any measurable degree, and both of them were alliances of convenience. There was Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano. Obi-Wan Kenobi is super dead at this point.
Super dead.
So there's only really one Jedi
right.
that Bo-Katan could have known. Well, that's not true. She did work with one other still living Jedi.
Well, we don't talk about him, though, right?
We don't talk about Ezra Bridger?
Well, because technically we don't know where he is at this point.
Yeah, we don't know where Ezra is.
He's like
that's the only
missing.
other one. That's
right.
the only other one that she would have worked with, was she worked with Ezra Bridger.
Gotcha. Which I felt like would have been too hard for them to bring him up, because then you got to go through a whole explanation about like what happened to him, like where did he go, like
where's Ezra has been a thing for like 4 years or something at this point. Like right. They're not just gonna randomly do it's gonna be a thing. It's gonna be in the Ahsoka show. It's gonna be a thing they're gonna build up to of where was he this entire time.
I want to say it's in this section. I hope it's not in the next section. But I wrote down talking about the plan, but not showing the plan. So before they go off and do the plan, they did talk about it and what their plan was. So I don't know.
Does the plan end up going according to plan?
I was going to say, so let's inform Aeron of your rules.
So my rule for the way that I will ruin heist movies for everyone forever is that in general, if people talk about a plan and they cut back and forth between them talking about the plan and executing the plan, like it happens in sequence with each other in the same sequence, the plan will succeed up until the point that it stops crossing over. If they talk about a plan and they don't show them executing the plan at the same time, if they talk about it and then go do it, the plan will fall apart basically immediately.
I am familiar with the Charles Rogers of heist.
I mean, if anybody's randomly tuning in on this episode and they've never seen another episode before this,
that is my rule. So that
is the general rule of thumb. So I just thought I made a note to write that down. That happened.
Good to refresh on that, because it tells us, I think that's a great observation, simply because it's true. And it makes sense why they do it this way, because why would you want to film something twice?
That is true. I've never really thought about it in that sense, in the production standpoint, that you wouldn't want to film something more than once unless it serves the purpose of like the story. There's just a reason why you would film it twice. But because it's so expensive to shoot a set piece like this. So I never thought of that.
Narrative. Yeah. But that does tell us that something is gonna happen with this plan.
Gonna happen. Yeah.
There's a red flag here. Get your red flags. I just love the bit in Droid Tales where Watto is like, red flags, get your red flags, as he's standing behind Anakin. Droid Tales is very funny, and it is on Disney Plus. So this is my plug to go watch Droid Tales. It is extremely funny. It's parodies of the original movies.
Interesting. I'll have to watch that. So before he does help them, though, he does take the child back to Frog Lady's house, her and her husband, and he's like, hey, can you babysit?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll let this genocidal maniac hang out here.
Well, it's funny because he does say
children.
He does specifically say to him, he said, be on your best behavior. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't think she knows that he was munching on her progeny.
I don't think so. This proves that he's not.
Which?
Well, he walked in. He walked in on him doing it.
Right.
And
he makes him not do it throughout the episode. So like when they're in the pool and Baby Yoda reaches for the egg and Mando's like, no.
Right.
Rewatching The Passenger, the whole time I'm like, okay, lady, you went into this. X number of eggs. Did you think to ask about that, or? Of course, I'm personally not good at math, so
One of my changes that I would have potentially made to The Passenger would be to have her call Baby Yoda on it at the midpoint, have that be the central conflict of the episode, and then when she saves Baby Yoda at the end, it's more meaningful. But no, she never mentions at all being aware that Baby Yoda's snacking on her progeny.
Well,
this
it also
the last
brute, yeah. So it also would make this scene stronger, because when one of the eggs does hatch, because Baby Yoda's looking at the eggs again, he's like, oh, look at the eggs. And then he notices one and it hatches and the tadpole comes out. And he's like, he comes to this realization like, oh, there's like living, beings in this thing. And I looked this up because I needed to know whether or not these eggs were fertilized before she got back to the planet with her husband or after. So I looked it up. There's going to be a little bit of scientifical jumping through
the
loopholes. Yeah.
Life cycle. Gotcha.
Right. So a normal frog, right, within about 10 days of being fertilized, the egg will hatch into a tadpole. So within 10 days. So I thought about it, and this whole entire timeline of events, from Frog Lady getting on Mando's ship, them getting stuck on the ice planet, them leaving the ice planet, them getting to Trask, I mean, we'll just say a week. You know what I mean? Like, for guesstimation.
So I just looked this up. I feel like you may have overdone your work a little bit here, because they actually state in the passenger that the eggs are unfertilized.
Oh, they do?
That is the whole point of bringing them to the husband, is because he has to fertilize them.
Okay. So then, but see, I made a little side note of that, because I did say that, because from the moment we see the tadpole hatch to later on in the episode, we see a more, I don't want to say adult version, but clearly the tadpole has gotten much larger by the end of the episode. And it's supposedly the same tadpole. So their life cycle is much faster, clearly, and than a regular frog. But I don't know. I guess it lessens the genocide from the last episode. Like, an unfertilized egg, right? Because if you think of it like chickens, like, we eat chicken eggs, right? They're not fertilized chicken eggs, and there's no genocide happening if there's no fertilization involved.
I feel like you're making excuses for Baby Yoda, because you have a whole shelf of him on your wall behind you.
100%. I am justifying his murder, but I'm just trying to, like, because people were so against it, I'm just trying to, like, bring it back to, like, well, it's, imagine if he's just eating chicken eggs. Like, if a hen lays a chicken egg, they're not fertilized. You can eat eggs all day long and it's fine, but you can still fertilize those eggs and turn them into baby chicks.
A sapient species. But Bradley has made a stirring logical defense of Baby Yoda using science.
I was trying. Well, and then the other thing too was that I also noted that, or when I was doing my research on frogs, which I did way too much, clearly.
I'm so glad you did, because I almost did.
Well, I noticed, I read somewhere that frogs will not lay their eggs until they're ready to be fertilized. So that's why I thought beforehand, the only reason why she even had eggs in the canister was because she had already laid them, because her husband had already fertilized them. So that's why I was like, oh, did he, he fertilized them and then he had to go ahead, like, to prepare for the baby room, I guess. I don't know. And then now, obviously, since you said they explicitly say they are unfertilized, I guess the rules don't apply. They're not the same, obviously, to to our real world frogs. So anyway, I think we're talking too much about frogs, but next up, Bo-Katan's crew attacks the ship to steal back the weapons, while the bumbling Empire can't do anything right until some are blasted out of the cargo bay.
They can't do nothing right.
You've got this older guy who's the Titus Welliver character, who's clearly older and has been in the Empire. But then you have these other guys, particularly the blonde guy, who are clearly much younger. This guy can't be more than 25.
The pilot, yeah.
The pilot. He can't be more than 25 years old. So you've got these new Empire people that have joined up, probably joined up shortly before or immediately after the destruction of the second Death Star and the death of the Emperor.
Right.
So you have people in the Empire now who have joined up this Empire without an Emperor. And you see in the way that the Titus Welliver character actually acts later on, and we'll get to it, what he does later in the episode is a very true believer, I've been in the Empire for 20 years moment. So I find it interesting, coming off what Aeron was saying about get them young, get them indoctrinated, get them in there. The Empire is still doing this.
Chuck them into military school really early on, put them on the officer track, commission them.
Tell them they're special. Tell them they can rise through the ranks of the Empire. Tell them that they're gifted. Send them to the Imperial Academy on Karita. I just think it's really interesting, the dynamic of this bridge crew and how disjointed they are compared to Bo-Katan's team.
Well, and this is why I want an Imperial Academy show, right? Like this entire scene alone makes me want a pure, like every character on the show is in the Empire, because it shows you all the different aspects and levels of the Empire. So like you have the very competent people who are generally at the top, and then you have the mid-level people who are incompetent, but they're there usually probably either by like their family is rich or like whatever, you know, is why they're there. And then you have the people at the bottom who are like this kid who's like clearly a very new to his ranking, or like he's a pilot, but he's probably very fresh out of the academy or something. So he's very scared.
Pilot. He's in a specialized role.
Right.
Which very much like how you would train someone from a very early age to be doing a particular role on a ship in our world, piloting. It's I mean, Royal Navy, you could start off as a midshipman when you were 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm. The historical Royal Navy, like Master and Commander Far Side of the World, is such a fucking good movie.
So good.
Like, this movie is so fucking good. And part of the reason this movie is so fucking good is because they accurately show that particularly military organizations, and particularly around that time, they would get people very young. You would be a midshipman at 12, 13 years old. And that was your thing. You were being trained to eventually. Now, Aeron, you would know more about this than I do. Was there a pipeline traditionally from midshipman to crew, or was it midshipman to officership? Because those are two very different things.
Midshipman to officer. Midshipman, you hope to learn enough, and you'll have other roles on board, like ship master's mate or something like that. But if you're a midshipman, you're on the officer track. So you're there learning on the job, studying for your lieutenant's exam. And then from there, you're being promoted through the ranks to hopefully one day a captain, hopefully one day an admiral. But the people running the ship, the crew, they're not necessarily members of the military.
Bouncing off this, here's an interesting note. I got to point this out. So this is after the Battle of Jakku, because the New Republic exists. I mentioned the Imperial Academy on Kurita. They probably no longer have an Imperial Academy on Kurita. So at the Battle of Jakku, which was the final decisive battle of the Galactic Civil War, the Imperial forces that remained after the death of Gallius Rax some of them were given secret instructions to rendezvous in the unknown regions with the Star Destroyer Executor. And that group was eventually led by Grand Admiral Ray Sloan, who, shout out to her, one of our LGBT representatives. She is a space fascist, like most of them apparently fucking are. But she leads this group to the unknown regions, and they eventually become the First Order. The empire that we see left behind are the Imperial people that were not deemed worthy of this. So that begs the question of who these people are. How are they getting these new recruits? Where are they training them? They no longer have Brendel Hux, who was the guy who was basically in charge of the best programming. That he would eventually develop the child programming for the First Order.
My assumption is that the young guys that we see on deck or on the bridge are the children of the people who are still embedded in, which is probably why they're so like, I don't know what I'm doing. What do I do? What do I do?
No, I definitely.
He's like, I have to follow procedure. Exactly. Right. I think we talked about in a previous episode, with the stormtroopers in season 1, we talked about who's the kind of person at this point who's going to join the fascists.
Right.
After they very clearly lost and they're not in power anymore. And the answer we came up with for the stormtroopers was someone who just wants to be a bully, someone who gets off on having that power. And here we're seeing a different take on that, where you have someone who maybe is in it because that's what their family did, or
Right.
they were told you could eventually rise through the ranks and become an officer, and it's easier to do this in this small thing than maybe the New Republic. That's just an interesting dynamic that I really like. After Mando gets screwed over again,
Cool.
because this happens to Mando a lot, Bo-Katan expressly states that it is her goal to take the throne. And we know that previously her goal was to put a new Mandalore on the throne. So by the transitive property, we can infer that Bo-Katan's stated goal in this season is not only to retake the throne, but to become Mandalore. She says, when I take the throne, I'm going to need this and this and this. So by the transitive property.
When she's like talking him into it, like, I never said I wasn't putting myself on the throne. I just
said I was putting a Mandalore on the throne.
I didn't specify what kind of weapons we were reclaiming. A ship is a weapon.
Yeah, because he says, you're changing the terms of the deal, and I wanted her so badly to say, pray I don't alter them further or whatever. I wanted her to say that.
I thought the
badly.
Same thing.
But she did. It was kind of funny where she kind of throws the cult thing in his face, and she says, this is the way.
If you say to them, this is the way,
that's it.
It's like his programming and his brain has went, I can't argue with this.
Yeah.
Flawless logic.
No.
Flawless logic.
I took that totally differently. I think he's, my impression was, that's gotta piss him off. She's like, this is the way.
Well, I think he also doesn't have a choice, yes, he did. It probably did piss him off. And he's probably more like, yeah, I mean, I have to follow this because this is just kind of like, this is when you say this is the way, that means like, okay, well, this is the way. But also he literally does not have a choice. He has to continue. Right. Because there's nothing else
on the freighter, it's rising. He can't leave.
Right.
That and it going off of leaning on Charles's perception, maybe it's reminding him, well, I'm here technically on the orders of my actual authority within the covert. So this is a means to an end of accomplishing my goal. If I need to get this done no matter what, so I can accomplish my goal for the real Mandalorians.
Right.
This is part of why I had such a problem with the inhibitor chip plotline before Bad Batch. Before Bad Batch came in and started exploring the angle of what it means to have free will and to not have control over your own functions, I liked the idea that the Grand Army of the Republic, the clones were programmed by their conditioning to such a great degree that they would not question any orders. And then when Order 66 came through, they went, well, that's what they said to do, so we're going to do it. This is kind of that, where we see this is the way forces him to reconcile an action in his brain of, is this the way? Can I make this the way in my brain? And then when he does, he goes, okay, this is the way. The whole season is about deprogramming.
It is. And again, I think her saying this is the way, he's not acting on her orders whatsoever. I think that if anything, it'd be reminding him of the orders he's already been given, because he does not see her as a legitimate authority. Personally, that's my personal.
Which will be really funny later on in the season.
Right. I do want to talk about the captains and the deck officer real quick. So let's talk about the biggest one, which is the Imperial Captain. He doesn't get a name. It's just Imperial Captain. But he's played by Titus Welliver, who, here's the thing I was talking about earlier. He was also in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Why did I know this was the guy that was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I don't know how everybody in this episode is from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but they are. So there you go. He was also, here's the other hilarious connection to this season. He was also in a show called Deadwood.
Oh. He was in Deadwood with Timothy Oliphant.
Exactly. So not only was he with Timothy Oliphant in Deadwood, he was also in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's also in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with our Mandalorian new character, and then of course Fennec Shand. So I thought that was really interesting how they're all like all these weird little incestual like shows that everybody's kind of in together. So he was one of the ones I wanted to bring up because of that connection. The other major character in this scene is the deck officer, who is in the cargo bay.
Mhm.
He is played by Kevin Dorff. Now, this guy has been on the reason why which I find his scenes hilarious, by the way,
Mhm.
in this episode, is because he's been in shows like The Office, Parks and Recreation, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I mean, he's literally been on like a single like episode of every single one of these shows.
He's
Funny
the
guy.
He's the guy that Leslie Knope punches.
I believe so, yes.
That's it.
Like,
That's
you're
it.
like, I know his face. I've seen him punched in the face before.
Mhm.
So I thought that was funny because his scenes, like we were talking about how you said that, you know, these people, the people who are in the Empire now are the left behinders, right? The people who weren't worthy enough to go on.
Mhm.
He proves this in his scene because not only does he he's so dumb that he locks the enemy in the control room of the cargo bay. He also just repeats the Imperial captain's orders, like word for word. He doesn't even come up with his own, like he's literally being ordered. He says, close all the doors, you know, is what he says, or something along those lines. The Imperial captain gives him the command, like, make sure they don't get there, right? And then he literally word for word repeats it to the stormtroopers, like he's giving the command himself, like he came up with it.
I just loved his line delivery of close all of them.
Just close all the doors. Just do it. Because he's probably not very good at his job, which is hilarious. And then, of course, his time is short-lived because he gets sucked out of the cargo bay. And I love the realization, too.
I have him trapped in the cargo control room.
Right. He's so proud of himself.
In the cargo bay.
Oh.
And I love the Titus Welliver character because he realizes what he just said and he goes, Are you stupid? Like, are you kidding me right now? And then for that 1 minute, you hear the sound of like the wind whooshing over the intercom. And then the one pilot guy is just kind of like confused. He's just like,
hello?
He's like, hello? Anybody there?
Hello? Is this thing on?
I just thought this whole little scene was so funny.
It's so funny. It really is. It really is. I really like how they design these ships with little hiding places in the hallways so that when you're in a firefight, you can just tuck yourself in a corner.
I was going to mention the hallways, actually. So
Okay.
this first half of this taking over the cargo bay, they have the shots of Bo-Katan in the hallway are some of the most visually, like, this is where I really appreciated her costume.
Yes.
Because I thought the lighting and everything and just like the hallway shots of this scene were so cool and so pretty. Like, I feel like you could screen grab these things, and that's like every single article that was like Bo-Katan shows up in The Mandalorian was from this scene. Because of her outlining. It was very like, it reminded me of the Rogue One trailer where they have Jyn Erso in the hallway that they don't have in the movie. That's like one of the most beautiful shots I've ever seen. And it's only in the trailer. It was like, just like that. Like, you see her in the hallway and you're like, wow, she's like silhouetted. She looks really nice, like outlined. It looks really nice. I don't know. I just really like these hallway shots.
It's so good. It's so good. The way that they film these characters. And it stood out in my viewing because the way she's filmed, like kind of from below, aiming with the waist up, she is being filmed the way that, at least in my opinion, she's not being filmed with the male gaze. She's being filmed like she is a powerful soldier coming in and taking over and taking command. And it's just like,
I like that because, you know, it does kind of go into the whole, it is directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. So it is directed by a woman. So it is interesting to see that, like, you took that from the different angles of Bo-Katan attacking people, and like, you know, it was really cool. But
we also saw this a bit with her previously directed episode, the Sanctuary episode. I guess just Sanctuary. We also did kind of see the way that she framed Cara Dune and the way that she framed the other lady. She has a name, I don't remember it.
She has a name.
After losing a few troopers, Imperial Captain gets a phone call from Moff Gideon. The group makes it to the bridge to stop the ship from crashing, and the Imperial Captain dies by suicide capsule in his mouth. So Moff Gideon FaceTime.
Yes. The Moff Gideon Zoom call meeting with the bot. I found it interesting, the subtitles, actually, when he says the line, "Are these the same pirates that attacked our other vessels?" The quotation marks in the line or in his voice but I noticed it through the subtitles of pirates that attack the other vessels, where he knows it's Bo-Katan and he knows what she's doing.
Right. It's almost like not a code name for them, but like he's kind of trying to legitimize their operation by calling them pirates. So being like, are those the same thugs that attacked us? Are those the same bad guys that were trying to steal our weapon?
It's like if you get the mob puts a hit out on you and takes down some members of your organization, you're like, okay, and these are the same gangbangers. Okay.
Yeah, it's almost an attempt to the way that they call the Alliance to Restore the Republic terrorists,
right,
and rebels. That they're not legitimate. They're not a legitimate government of Mandalore that's trying to retake its planet. They're just pirates that are attacking our ship.
Or again, it's just code for anyone listening in on the comm, like the rest of the people present. This is a need to know basis without specifically saying it's them insurgent Mandalorians.
That death was brutal though. When he like shot it, like cyanide pilled.
It was confusing what he did, because I was confused. At first I thought you're right. I thought it was just a cyanide pill thing, but like his mouth would have foamed up. So like clearly this is like a special type of
zaps him. Yeah, or like zaps him in the head and fries his cranium.
Yeah, it was very brutal.
And like that's what kills him. And I was like, that's horrifying. We know that cyanide capsules are a thing because Vimerati has one. When she's captured in Phasma, and then she also brings it up in Black Spire. She actually almost bites it at one point in Black Spire because the Resistance spies. So spies traditionally will use them in case of capture. But it's interesting that this random Imperial captain not only has a cyanide pill, but has one that's like doesn't kill him with poison. It kills him by zapping him.
Oh, well, clearly it's too late to send reinforcements. Like, you guys have fucked up so much that I shouldn't even bother to help you. So you know what that means. He's like, I do know what that means. So long live the Empire. And it's like, that's kind of like back to that deprogramming conversation. This group is like not the same Empire. Like, this is a different group of the Empire.
But also real life historical precedent for when it comes to, because they're there to take the ship. One of the reasons we have the trope of the captain going down with their ship is if your ship is captured by the enemy, that's a tool in their belt that they can use against you. If you show up without the ship, why would they ever trust you again? And so in that case, there's many times in like maritime history where when it becomes clear that you're not going to be able to escape the enemy, you sabotage your own ship and you sink it.
Right, because it's better not to have it be in their hands than to not have it at all.
Exactly. And in this case, it's very clear, like, okay, we have to do whatever we can to just destroy this ship. And that's probably going to mean that everybody on board dies too. But specifically with this character committing suicide as he does, it feels more personal. It's not just we have to wreck this ship. It's I need to wreck this ship. And since I left, because they've won. At that point, I've lost the ship. I can't go back. I have to die now.
And we also see this as a mentality that is prevalent in the Empire. Operation Cinder, which will get mentioned later in the season, part of what Operation Cinder's deal was that you were meant to execute Palpatine's orders in the event of his death to bomb not only the rebel worlds that had helped the rebellion, but you were also meant to destroy planets that were loyal to the Empire that had, quote unquote, failed to protect their emperor. And Gallius Rax, spoilers for the Aftermath books, skip this part if you don't want to know the actual villain motivation behind the main villain of that trilogy. Gallius Rax's whole deal with bringing the Empire to Jakku in the first place and luring the New Republic there to engage them in battle was to destroy both the Empire and the New Republic in one fell swoop. That was his whole deal. His plan was to use a planetary super weapon that's buried on Jakku to destroy the remains of the Empire because it didn't deserve to be there, and also strike a huge blow to the New Republic. So this is something that's deep in the Empire philosophy, that if and it's what they did to Mandalore. They state it's what they did to Mandalore in this episode, or they state somewhere else, I think. I don't think it's in this episode. I think he just says the planet's cursed. But they basically bombed the planet into submission.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're just like, well, the Mandalorians can't be controlled. They're going to keep rebelling.
Scorched earth.
Scorch earth it. Let's go.
Right.
That's what they did. And that's...
If we can't have it, no one will.
Right. And that's like, you look at the Empire building the Death Star and destroying Alderaan with it. There's an alternate universe. I think it might be the sequence from... I think it might be the alternate history sequence from the Last Jedi novelization, where they actually take the Death Star and destroy several other planets, including Mon Cala and Chandrila, which is where Mon Mothma was from, who she was the planetary representative of in the Senate. So it's definitely an interesting thing that pervades the Empire, this mentality of, we would rather destroy something than have you have it. He also, she mentioned she's looking for the Darksaber.
By name.
By name. This is
the first time we've heard the name, but not the first time we've seen it.
Aeron, did you put together that the Darksaber was the thing Moff Gideon was holding at the end of season 1?
I was aware of it because after I saw season 1, I was like, what's that weird glowy lightsaber?
Right.
And the internet told me it's
right.
called a Darksaber. I'm like, there's a lightsaber, now there's a Darksaber. How many sabers do we have?
I just realized that that's what that is, the verbiage there, like light and dark.
The dark saber.
The light saber. Yeah. I just got that. That's so random. Okay, sorry.
It sounded made up.
It does. It does kind of sound made up.
But yeah, I was aware of that, and that he took it from somebody important. And apparently it's her. She was the one that was somebody important.
Yep.
She was somebody.
So Satine, this will be relevant in episode 8, and I'm sure our guest for episode 8, I'm not going to say who it is, but I'm very excited to have them on. I'm sure that guest will talk a lot about why it's interesting the way she obtained the Darksaber in the first place. That she got it and then she lost it to Moff Gideon. And why it's so important that she gets it back a certain way. Was given directly to her. It was handed to her. Well, it was somebody else had it, and that person said, I can't be a good ruler for Mandalore. Right. Here you go. And this will be important later on in this season of the show.
Yeah, so after we learned about the Darksaber, and that's basically Bo-Katan's goal, Mando is like, hey, I gotta go. Like, you guys, you got your ship, everything's cool now. I need the name. I need to know where to find the Jedi that you were talking about earlier. And she did something that I wasn't expecting. Like, I don't know if I was expecting them to name drop like they did in this episode. I thought she would just say, like, because she kind of starts off the conversation like, go to this planet and go to this place.
Go to the city of Caladan on the planet of Corvus.
Thank you.
I wrote it down.
And I expected her to say that part. And I thought after that, she would go, there you'll find the Jedi you're looking for. Not, there you'll find Ahsoka Tano, the most famous Jedi in all of the animated series. Like, da-da-da-da-da. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and the currently best trained Jedi currently living. Come at me, internet.
But that's what I was so confused that they were going to name drop her like that, because I was like, whoa. They're name dropping Ahsoka Tano. This is a big deal, because it was
a huge deal. It broke the internet.
It really did, because not only did in this episode did every article ever that existed go, Bo-Katan from the Clone Wars shows up in The Mandalorian. They're like, oh, by the way, she also mentions the Darksaber by name. Also, we get the name drop of Ahsoka Tano, another animated character. Like, this was a big deal.
We were made aware that Ahsoka was going to show up.
The official confirmation.
Officially,
this is the first official confirmation. If you paid attention to the rumor sphere, you kind of knew that Rosario Dawson had been cast as Ahsoka Tano.
Mm-hmm.
But then the same rumor sphere also claimed that Tamara Morrison was going to play Captain Rex in this season. He did not, but So the rumor mill's not perfect, but you did kind of have an inkling. And when they name dropped it, they were like, okay, she's going to show up. Damn. Now, I thought it would be the rest of the season. I thought we wouldn't see her until episode 8. Mm-hmm. That's not what ended up happening this season.
Right. It was weird. That was this quickly that they name dropped her too.
I find it interesting that after she says, go find Ahsoka Tano, Bo-Katan says this is the way again, but she says it much more the same way we've seen other Mandalorians do it. And then he repeats it back to her. Mm-hmm.
More of a
I find that interesting.
Official,
he, in this moment, is using his own programmed doctrine to acknowledge her as a Mandalorian, even though she removes her helmet. I find that interesting from would the Den of early season 1 have done that? Would he have been able to acknowledge that this woman is Mandalorian, even if she does not follow the rules?
It's very interesting. She goes through this episode really doing a lot to gain his trust early on. Like, she saves his life a couple of times. If you save a guy's life enough times, eventually he's gonna treat you as a person. And then I think he responds well to praise and acknowledgement from authority figures, but also he sees her go through this struggle with wanting to, I think we see him on this journey through the episode. He's an empathetic person, and he sympathizes with her, and he's like, I get where you're coming from. And it starts to break down that maybe there's more than one way to be a Mandalorian.
Right.
And she turns around and she speaks to him again in his language. Peace be with you, and also with you.
So the episode ends with Mando picking up the child from Froggy Daycare and returning to an interestingly repaired Razor Crust.
Repaired.
I think the implication of the frog being pink is it's a little girl frog.
Yes, I like that.
So they have a little girl frog that's adorable. I actually dig what the Mon Calamari did to his ship. I kind of like all the netting and stuff.
I don't think he appreciated it as much, but
he has no taste.
Right, clearly.
It's a beach theme. It's a beach theme.
It's nautically decorated.
It's nautically decorated.
Also, this is randomly in this scene, but this random little squid monster was so disgusting and creepy, like that they did this for no reason. Like, it was like another squid jumping on Baby Yoda's face, basically. And I was like, I don't like when they showed the scene where you saw all the eyes looking at Baby Yoda, because he's looking at it like, oh, this is so cool, and then it jumps at him and the Mando catches it right before it attacks him. But I thought it was so gross.
It is giant spider season in the Pacific Northwest in the last couple of weeks. I have found 2 spiders the size bigger than my palm.
Ew.
Oh!
Yeah, the name of the species is literally called the giant house spider.
No.
They get up to about 4.5 inches across, and this is the season where they start wandering around. And wow. I hate spiders. I know they serve a purpose in our ecological way of life and circle of life, yada yada yada. They eat bugs. I can't even look at them. Last episode.
Right.
The naughty white ice spiders.
At least they're kind of like slimy, so it's a bit more like they're squids, which I can handle. It's if they have that little, they're walking.
They're walking.
Spider.
Yeah, it was kind of an odd thing to throw in at the end of the episode.
My instinct, even though I am an adult, is to be like, Dad, come kill it. And Mando does the dad thing.
That's true. Right.
He smushes the scary critter.
That is true.
Baby Yoda ends up eating because
of course he does.
Because of course. But I thought it was a funny callback too, because when he eats it, you see the little tentacle in his mouth kind of slurp up, just like Casca Reeves earlier in the episode, where she slurps up a squid.
Because he was kind of looking at her in that scene like, I want to be that.
Right. So I thought that was interesting that they did a similar parallel right there.
I want to shout out one of the pieces of concept art, which is the one of him in the cockpit, and the ship is filling up with water. So you have the water in this kind of knee line in the cockpit, but then it's clear the ship is submerged further, so it's leaking. I just thought that was a really cool visual that didn't wind up in the episode. Was when the water was leaking into the ship. That clearly that was a sequence they had in concept that they cut. I really liked that piece of concept art. That's the only thing I really wanted to shout out here. We already covered directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, written by Jon Favreau.
I just want to say something I had in mind from my very first viewing of this episode was I am so happy to see a character that is pictured on screen in a Star Wars piece of media, live action, who's a redhead that's not a fucking fascist.
She is a monarchist, but we'll ignore that.
But not like a space Nazi, which...
Right.
Just makes me happy as a redhead to finally be like, potential cosplay. That's not,
Yes.
A space Nazi. Okay.
I like that.
Yes. Speaking as someone who knows what Aeron looks like, I think Aeron would make an excellent Bo-Katan.
Yeah, I think you could do the cosplay really well. I think you should get on that. Like, you should try to find someone to make you the armor, and then you could totally go with the rest of the outfit. You could do it. I could see you walking around with a helmet in your hand, and you have the red hair and everything, and everybody be like, oh, wow, that's a really good cosplay.
I usually keep my hair much shorter than this, and so as
there you go.
Coaches, I do need to cut my hair so it fits under a hat. So it's a good point. Keep in mind.
My final thought on the episode is, it's my favorite of the season thus far.
I was going to say ranking wise, where do you put this?
Ranking wise, it goes the Heiress, the Marshal, the Passenger.
I also have the same ranking.
I find it interesting that the first three episodes are named after prominent side characters. So we have the Marshal, named after Cobb Vanth, the Passenger named after Frog Lady, and the Heiress named after Bo-Katan. Love this episode. Got in, got out, but it was jam-packed, not only with references and details, but with a lot of interesting psychology and real-world history to explore. It helpfully worked out that I had asked Aeron to do this one specifically because Katie Sackhoff.
Right.
But it also worked out that this one had a lot of neat stuff to unpack as far as the psychology of the Children of the Watch and how they operate and how that works with real life cults. It's a very dense episode. It's short, but it's very dense, and I really loved it.
Loves it.
Bradley, final thoughts from you?
No, I just like seeing Bo-Katan translated to live action. I'm glad that she shows up again later on in the season. I was scared that they were gonna do the whole let's only show them one time, never show them again kind of thing. And thankfully, I am wrong about that in this case with her character. I think she is going to end up being a little bit more prevalent of a character moving on, hopefully to season 3. If she were to be made, not series regular, but you know what I mean? Whereas instead of just a guest star for one episode and a guest star for a second episode, I'd like to see her just be a more Grief Karga character where she shows up a little bit more frequently than just a guest star. So, but yeah, I love the episode. It's great. And I'm glad to see what else comes through.
Aeron, you want to do your pluggables? Where can the people find you?
You can find me on Twitter occasionally when I remember that. Oh yeah, Twitter. I can just log in and it's right there in my browser. Yeah. Aeroloco, AEROLLOCO. That's the handle. And if you want to talk more about cults and in the context of either the Mandalorian or real life cults and religious and extremist groups, I would love to hear about it because that's about 80% of what's going on in my brain at any given moment in time. Yeah, I have other things I do, but they're all linked from the Twitter anyway. So if you go to Twitter, that's where it will be.
Awesome. Well, Aeron, thank you for coming and joining us and talking to us about the Heiress, and
thank you for allowing me to return.
Anytime.
Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze.
Did we forget something? Email us at goldsquadrongays@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at goldsquadgays, and you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at goldsquadrongays. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gaze, where we post this podcast as well as exclusive video content.
Please join us next week and every week for another episode of Gold Squadron Gaze.
Aired.
Hi, Bear.
That what? I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
I think the mail is being delivered.
Ah, okay. Well, it's very important that we get the mail delivered. So.
This was our real guest that we wanted on. We wanted Bear.
Right.
Bear, unfortunately, only speaks dog.
She only speaks dog.
Bear contribute. Bear has a lot of Bo-Katan opinions.
Yep.
She
definitely does.
She's very dumb, but she does have Bo-Katan opinions that are all very correct. They are work.